A heated clash in the Oval Office, accusations of gambling with World War III, and a Ukrainian president abruptly shown the door. What really happened when Volodymyr Zelenskyy met Donald Trump? And how does this shocking event reshape global politics? Welcome to Germany Decoded, the channel that bridges the gap for international audiences by breaking down German politics, culture, and business into clear, accessible insights. If you're looking for in-depth analysis tailored for expats and global viewers, you're in the right place. The tension began even before the meeting officially started. As Volodymyr Zelenskyy entered the White House, he was met with an unexpected and pointed remark from Donald Trump. "You again haven't put on a suit." Moments later, a journalist close to Trump echoed the same question, amplifying the awkwardness of the situation. This seemingly minor comment set the stage for what would become a full-blown diplomatic ambush. What followed was a meeting that was supposed to strengthen ties between the United States and Ukraine. Instead, it unraveled into a dramatic confrontation that left the world stunned. Seated in front of the iconic fireplace in the Oval Office, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy began with formal statements. But as the press conference progressed, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. By the end of the confrontation, Zelenskyy and his delegation were escorted out of the White House, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and global shockwaves. But how did it come to this? And what does it mean for the future of US-Ukraine relations, Europe's security, and the balance of power in the world? It was supposed to be a routine meeting, a discussion about a raw materials deal that would benefit both the United States and Ukraine. But what unfolded in the Oval Office was anything but routine. Seated in front of the iconic fireplace, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy began with formal statements. However, as the press conference progressed, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The breaking point came when Trump accused Zelenskyy of being ungrateful for the billions in aid provided by the United States. In a heated exchange, Trump declared, "You're gambling with World War III," to which Zelenskyy fired back, "I'm not playing cards, Mr. President." The confrontation escalated further, with Trump and Vance accusing Ukraine of corruption and mismanaging US funds. Zelenskyy, in turn, accused Trump of underestimating the threat posed by Vladimir Putin. The tension in the room was strong as two supposed allies clashed in front of the world's media. At one point, Trump reportedly said, "This country has backed you far more than anyone else," to which Zelenskyy responded, "I am very respectful, but I will not gamble with the lives of millions." The argument reached a boiling point, and shortly after, Zelenskyy and his delegation were escorted to an adjacent room. The planned joint meal was abruptly cancelled, and the Ukrainian president was asked to leave the White House. In the aftermath, Trump took to his media platform, Truth Social, stating that Zelenskyy could return to the White House only if he was truly committed to peace. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy gave an interview to Fox News, expressing regret over how the meeting unfolded, but refusing to apologize for standing his ground. This public fallout between two allies was unusual, leaving the world to wonder, how did relations between the US and Ukraine deteriorate so dramatically? And what does this mean for the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and the shifting dynamics of global power? To understand the explosive events in the Oval Office, we need to look at the history between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Their relationship has been anything but smooth. In fact, one of Trump's impeachment proceedings was indirectly tied to Zelenskyy, stemming from a controversial phone call in 2019. More recently, tensions got worse during the US presidential campaign, when Zelenskyy appeared to show sympathy for Trump's opponent. Trump, in turn, accused Zelenskyy of being a dictator and even suggested that Ukraine was to blame for its conflict. These remarks did not go unnoticed, and Zelenskyy responded sharply, further straining their already fragile relationship. Adding to the tension was the presence of J.D. Vance, Trump's deputy, who had previously made controversial statements about Ukraine. In 2022, Vance declared, "I don't care what happens to Ukraine," a comment that drew widespread criticism. Although he later walked back his statement, his perceived disregard for Ukraine remained a point of contention. The backdrop to the Oval Office meeting was a proposed raw materials deal, which Zelenskyy hoped would strengthen Ukraine's economy and secure military guarantees. However, Trump and Vance had other concerns. They accused Ukraine of corruption and demanded transparency about how US aid had been used. These accusations, combined with the personal history between the leaders, set the stage for the dramatic confrontation. With these unresolved tensions simmering beneath the surface, the Oval Office meeting was destined to be anything but ordinary. What began as a formal discussion quickly evolved into one of the most dramatic diplomatic confrontations in recent history. The fallout from the Oval Office confrontation was swift and far-reaching. Shortly after the meeting, Donald Trump took to his media platform, Truth Social, to issue a brief but pointed statement. He wrote, "Zelenskyy can come back if he really wants peace." Meanwhile, Zelenskyy appeared on Fox News, expressing regret over how the meeting unfolded, but standing firm on his position, stating that he would not apologize for defending Ukraine's interests. The public nature of the confrontation shocked many, as such disputes between allies are rarely aired so openly. Global leaders quickly reacted, with many expressing solidarity with Zelenskyy and Ukraine. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and French President Emmanuel Macron all reaffirmed their support for Ukraine, emphasizing the importance of unity in the face of ongoing challenges. However, not all reactions were supportive. Within the United States, Trump's actions drew heavy criticism from the Democratic Party and even some former security advisors who described the incident as a diplomatic fiasco. Yet Trump's base, including members of the MAGA movement, praised his firm stance, framing it as a necessary move to hold Ukraine accountable. Meanwhile, in Russia, the confrontation was met with approval. Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president, called Zelenskyy's actions at the White House a laughingstock and praised Trump for his approach. Notably, a Russian state-run news agency, TASS, was present at the White House during the meeting, while major American outlets like AP and Reuters were excluded, a decision the White House later described as a mistake. The events at the White House sent shockwaves through the global political landscape. For NATO allies, the incident raised serious questions about the reliability of the United States as a partner. In Europe, leaders began to consider the possibility of a future where they might need to rely less on US support and take greater responsibility for their defense. But what are the long-term consequences of this dramatic fallout? And how will it shape the future of US-Ukraine relations, Europe's security, and the global balance of power? Let's have a closer look. The Oval Office confrontation between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy was more than just a diplomatic incident. It was a signal of deeper shifts in the global order. For decades, the United States has been the cornerstone of NATO and a key ally to Europe. But the events at the White House have raised questions about whether that role is changing. In Europe, the fallout has sparked renewed discussions about the need for greater self-reliance in defense. Leaders like German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni have called for stronger European defense policies, with some even suggesting the creation of a unified European army. The idea of Europe standing on its own is no longer just a theoretical concept, it's becoming a necessity. For Ukraine, the consequences are even more immediate. Zelenskyy's position as a leader defending his country's sovereignty has been both strengthened and challenged. While he continues to receive support from European allies, the uncertainty surrounding US support under Trump's leadership has left Ukraine in a precarious position. The question remains, can Ukraine count on the United States in the long term? For Donald Trump, the confrontation with Zelenskyy reflects his broader worldview. Trump has long advocated for a more transactional approach to international relations, where allies are expected to contribute more and follow US directives. His recent interactions with Russian President Vladimir Putin have further fueled speculation about his vision for a world governed by great powers, with smaller nations expected to fall in line. This approach has left many NATO allies uneasy, as they question whether the United States will continue to uphold its commitments under the alliance. For Europe, this uncertainty has become a catalyst for change, pushing leaders to rethink their reliance on US support. As the dust settles from this dramatic confrontation, one thing is clear: the global balance of power is shifting. But what does this mean for the future of international alliances and the fight for stability in an increasingly uncertain world. Let's wrap up with some final thoughts. The Oval Office confrontation has not only shaken US-Ukraine relations, but has also sparked intense debate among political experts and leaders worldwide. In Germany, political analysts have described the event as both shocking and historic. Johannes Winkel, a transatlantic expert, remarked, "It was prearranged, a deliberate escalation. From the moment Zelensky entered the White House, the tone was set." Alice Weidel, a prominent German politician, added her perspective, stating, "This was like a cleansing storm. It became clear where Trump is headed. He wants peace, but on his terms." Weidel also criticized the lack of European leadership, saying, "We are no longer in the driver's seat. No one asks us anymore. We don't play a role." These comments highlight a growing concern in Europe, the diminishing influence of European nations in global decision-making. As Weidel pointed out, the negotiations are being led by others. In fact, we have no European leadership, and that is extremely serious for us. The debate also touched on the broader implications for Ukraine. Some analysts argued that Zelensky's position has been weakened by the confrontation, while others emphasized his resilience. As one expert noted, Zelensky is fighting not just for Ukraine's freedom, but for the freedom of Europe and the world. What do you think about these dramatic developments? Will this confrontation reshape global politics, or is it just another chapter in an ongoing saga? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching Germany Decoded, your go-to source for understanding the complex dynamics shaping modern Germany. Don't forget to subscribe for weekly videos that make German politics, business, and culture accessible to everyone.